Hello world, Clinton here, talking about Mary Shelley's Frankenstein. It's almost Halloween, you know? There's a convention tomorrow, Friday, today, technically, uh, on reading Frankenstein, then, now, and next. When I was last in Toronto, Josh took me aside and available to be read online at the open library. I put a link down to that below. See, check it out. Here's the ebook. Oh yeah. So here is Frankenstein, the modern Prometheus. So anyway, I've been reading this book. It's freaking awesome, and for all sorts of reasons that tie into directly everything that I'm doing here. It's just perfect. It's the perfect freaking book to read. Okay, so I'm gonna go through it a little bit before the symposium. I should have had this video out like days ago, so I had time to get people to watch it and I could talk about it. But I was just finding more and more stuff, and I just got too deep into it. So yeah, here we go. Like hours before this thing starts, I'm putting my thoughts out here. What are you gonna do? Anyway, Frankenstein. The story is told by Robert Walton. That's the central framing character. And Robert Walton, he is out on a boat on this cockamamie dream of his to go explore the North Pole on an Arctic expedition. Back, people like going on grand exploratory quests to explore the Arctic. That was basically like the space race of the 1600s, 1700s, 1800s. If you had the same way astronauts are crazy to risk their lives and have to dream to go into space, people were crazy and risking their lives to dream to get on a boat and go freaking try to find your way through massive icebergs and not die and stay alive and try to find the North Pole. Right, and there was lots of governments doing that stuff, but like imperialism and whatnot, right, or like companies looking to find trade routes. But not our hero Robert Walton here. At the start of the story, he writes in a letter back to his sister, I try in vain to be persuaded that the pole is the seat of frost and desolation. It ever presents itself to my imagination as the region of beauty and delight. There, Margaret, the North Pole, the sun is forever visible, its broad disk just skirting the horizon and diffusing a perpetual splendor. There, for, with your leave, my sister, I will have some trust in preceding navigators, the snow and frost are banished, and sailing over a calm sea, we may be wafted to a land surpassing in wonders and beauty every region hitherto discovered on the habitable globe. Its productions and features may be without example, as the phenomena of the heavenly bodies undoubtedly are in those undiscovered solitudes. What might not be expected in a country of eternal light? He's talking about the North Pole. Beauty and splendor in the country of eternal light with no snow is what he expects to find there. Again, like, I may there discover the wondrous power which attracts the needle, and may regulate 1,000 celestial observations that require only this voyage to render their seeming eccentricities consistent forever. Yeah, it's basically like he doesn't even know what's going to happen. He just has to go to the North Pole and discover it, be the first one there, and yeah, figure out how magnets work and how compasses work once you get there, because like all the secrets will finally be opened for exploration, right? So it's like, I don't think most people thought that the North Pole was like full of beautiful you know, all right, the land of eternal light. All right. Why does this guy? See, here's the best part. You may remember that a history of all the voyages made for the purposes of discovery composed the whole of our good Uncle Thomas's library. My education was neglected, yet I was passionately fond of reading. These volumes were my study day and night, and my familiarity with them increased that regret which I had felt as a child on learning my father's dying injunction had forbidden my uncle to allow me to embark on a seafaring life. So he's just a little boy, wasn't taught properly, but had a library full of books about the sea, and so he read those instead. And now he wants to be a sea voyager. And I have to get a boat and go exploring. And I might find wonderful things in the North Pole, right? He's just kind of off, right? I also became a poet, and for 1 year lived in a paradise of my own creation. Mary Shelley was the girlfriend and wife of Percy Shelley, famous romantic poet. We'll call him second generation romantic poet. She wrote Frankenstein hanging out at the poet Blake's house. Now, so let's talk a bit about the romantic poets here. As Camille Paglia puts it, order is heaven's first law, says Pope, from the cold beauty of Descartes and Newton's mechanical universe. The Enlightenment, as Peter Gay asserts, used pagan scientism to free European culture from Judeo-Christian theology. Reason, not faith, created the modern world, right? But overstress of any faculty causes a rebound to the other extreme. The Apollonian Enlightenment produced the counter-reaction of irrationalism and daemonism, which is Romanticism. Romanticism regards hierarchy as a repressive social fiction. But man is a biologically hierarchical animal. When one hierarchy is removed, another automatically springs up to take its place. The great irony of Romanticism is that a movement predicated on freedom will compulsively re-enslave itself to imaginative orders even more fixed. See, that jives with what McLuhan says, where he says, Pope has seen the tribal consciousness latent in the new mass culture of the book trade. Blake and the Romantics and the Victorians alike became obsessed with the actualization of Pope's vision in the new organization of an industrial, right, within the industrial economy, right? They wanted to bring nature back into the mechanical world. We'll put it that way. And they wanted, however, were using books to do it, right? Blake and the Romantics felt no qualms, but turned literature over to the transcendental arm. Henceforth, literature will be at war with itself and with the social mechanics of conscious goals and motivations. For the matter of literary vision will be collective and mythic, while the forms of literary expression and communication will be individualistic, segmental, and mechanical. So the Romantics wrote of their vision of the world as collective and mythic, right? This is the story of all of us. This is nature. This is the wondrous things, right? That's what went into these books, but books themselves are individualistic, segmental, and mechanical. Here's the whole world just for you in private. Here's the whole world just for you in private. So in Frankenstein, Mary Shelley, who hung out with poets, understood poets. She was a romantic poet, right? She was in the scene, right? She lived it, right? She has, on the second page, she has the crazed, interesting guy who's going on an ocean voyage just because he was possessed by books of ocean voyaging, not for any rational purpose, but out of the dreams of his heart. She has him say that he was a poet once, and for a year lived in the paradise of his own creation, right? To be a poet is to write your own world. Next page. He laments to his sister, I have no friend, Margaret. When I'm glowing with the enthusiasm of success, there will be none to participate my joy. If I am assailed by disappointment, no one will endeavor to sustain me through the dejection. I shall commit my thoughts to paper, it is true, but that is a poor medium for the communication of feeling. Books. Interesting. That's the best part. Is that as he's sailing northward through the ice, he quotes Coleridge, Samuel Taylor Coleridge. He quotes from who was one of the first generation Romantic poets. And Coleridge wrote The Ancient Mariner, Rime of the Ancient Mariner, which is about a sea voyage. Well, it's an old man telling us story of the sea voyage that he once went on that scared him to death, right? And they were going through ice, and they're going to a strange place and exploring something new. And early on in the poem, the mariner, there was an albatross, a bird, that was visiting them. The only living thing all around that kept coming back. And I'll just read it. God save thee, ancient mariner, from the fiends that plague thee thus. Why look'st thou so? With my crossbow I shot the albatross. The sun now rose up on the right, out of the sea came he, still hid in mist, and on the left went down into the sea. And the good south wind still blew behind, but no sweet bird did follow, nor any day for food or play came to the mariner's hullo. And I had done a hellish thing, and it would work 'em woe, for all averred I had killed the bird that had made the breeze to blow. Ah, wretch, said they, the bird to slay that made the breeze to blow. Nor dim nor red, like God's own head, the glorious sun uprist. Then all averred I had killed the bird that brought the fog and mist. 'Twas right, said they, such birds to slay that bring the fog and mist. So, like, you killed the bird, stuff starts going down, and it's like, oh no, bad things happened. That's because you killed the bird. Good things happened. Oh, probably because you killed that evil bird, right? No one even can get their orientations as to what's good or bad or what works anymore, right? They're kind of going into like, well, the fair breeze blew, the white foam flew, the furrow followed free. We were the first that ever burst into that silent sea. The silent sea is an extremely powerful metaphor. It's the place that you're at that no one's ever been before, the final frontier, if you like, the right. And it can be a headspace even. In the poem, it's a place of total radical alienation where demons return and whatnot. It's a crazy psychedelic trip, and that's where Robert Walton, the character in Frankenstein, is going on his boat. He convinced a bunch of guys who were crazy enough to go with him on this voyage, and they're cutting through the sea into a place, right? Wow, here we are, approaching the Arctic where no one has ever been before. And then they find someone. Actually, they see something going along, and it's like a crazed thing. Like, what the hell is that on a dog sled? And then they find someone on an iceberg dying. Like, holy shit! I thought we were alone in this silent sea. Who the hell's here with us? And it is Victor Frankenstein. And Victor Frankenstein is asking them, which way are you going? Right? They're like, oh, come aboard. And he's like on his iceberg dying. He's like, wait, which way are you going? It's like, well, we're going north. We're not going south back to land. And he's like, okay, as long as you're going north, I'll go with you. And they're like, what? You don't want to go back to civilization? We find you on an iceberg halfway to the Arctic, and you want to keep going? You're like dead on a freaking... Anyway. So, gradually, Robert befriends and gains the trust of Victor Frankenstein, who begins to tell his tale. Guess how that starts? Well, in childhood, Victor Frankenstein. When I was 13 years of age, we all went on a party of pleasure to the baths near Thonen. The inclemency of the weather obliged us to remain a day confined to the inn. In this house I chanced to find a volume of the works of Cornelius Agrippa. I opened it with apathy. The theory which he attempts to demonstrate and the wonderful facts which he relates soon changed this feeling into enthusiasm. A new light seemed to dawn upon my mind, and, bounding with joy, I communicated my discovery to my father. My father looked carelessly at the title page of the book and said, Cornelius Agrippa, my dear Victor, do not waste your time upon this. This is sad trash. Now, his dad didn't explain why these books were crap. The books were crap because they were like 300 years out of date insofar as science goes. But Victor didn't get that. So he's like, Dad, my dad doesn't know anything. And he keeps reading all these like 300-year-old science books, thinking they were all like awesome and they explained everything, right? I entered with the greatest diligence into the search of the philosopher's stone and the elixir of life, but the latter soon obtained my undivided attention. Wealth was an inferior object, but what glory would attend the discovery if I could banish disease from the human frame and render man invulnerable to any but violent death? Nor were these my only visions. The raising of ghosts and devils was a promise liberally accorded by my favorite authors, the fulfillment of which I most eagerly sought. So he basically tries to become a wizard or an alchemist in well, that all goes to hell when a lightning bolt strikes a tree, and he asks his dad, what was that? And his dad goes, oh, that was a lightning bolt. What causes that? Oh, electricity. What's electricity? Oh, and his dad explains electricity, and young Victor Frankenstein's like, wait a minute. The alchemists don't know about electricity. What the hell? And his dad's like, yeah, because that's like old that. Like, of course they didn't know it, right? And so he's like, oh my god, I've been wasting my life. Anyway, yeah. Old weird books that no one else read. We got two characters so far who early in their life read a whole bunch of books that were just out there, that like fueled their imagination and gave them weird dreams or visions for their future life that they had a hard time explaining. Now, the whole idea of romanticism is, right, as a genre, I'm learning, is, right, the expression of the inner sense of the soul through how you see it in all of nature and whatnot, right? So, that's the quest for science that Victor Frankenstein eventually goes on properly when he goes to school and learns actual real science, right? But of course, we all are familiar enough with the story. I'll jump straight to Frankenstein's monster, which is very different in the book than what you're used to on television. Frankenstein's monster is hiding in a chicken coop, right? He, as soon as Victor Frankenstein makes him, he freaks out. It's like, whoa, what have I done? Oh my god, this thing's horrible, and runs away. And the monster is like, the first like experience is like, oh my god, they hate me. But the monster like is kind of like coming to consciousness, learning how to it's like the steps of like a baby learning to experience the world, learning to differentiate objects, learning how to eat, right? Just learning it all on his own, stumbling through the countryside, bumbling in the dark. He holds up in like a chicken coop that's next to this house of like this like poor family, and he just watches them through a hole in the wall, and he learns how to talk that way. And then they take in a young Arabian woman who's Christian and wants to live as a free woman in Europe and escape Turkey, right? And they begin teaching her English and how to read. And so Frankenstein learns how to read through this hole in the wall over the course of like, a whole year. He's just living in this chicken coop, spying on this family, learning English, learning how to read, well, French actually, and learning how to read and learning, and then he finds a pile of books on the ground one day, like on the sidewalk. 3 books. They are The Sorrows of Young Werther by Goethe, a book of history, Volney's, Plutarch's Lives, and Milton's Paradise Lost. So those are just the 3 random books that he gets to read and have his mind filled with stuff. And the first one there, The Sorrows of Young Werther, it's like super emo romantic poetry. I read some of it, and I would read some of it here. It's just so over the top. It's just the most like, oh my gosh. Okay, Werther. Okay, I have made all sorts of acquaintances, yet I have yet found no society. I know not what attraction I possess for the people. So many of them like me, and attach themselves to me, and then I feel sorry when the road we pursue together goes only a short distance. If you inquire what people are like here, I must answer, the same as everywhere. The human race is but a monotonous affair. Most of them labor the greater part of their time for a mere subsistence, and the scanty portion of freedom which remains to them so troubles them that they use every exertion to get rid of it. Oh, the destiny of man! Right? Goethe's novella, The Sorrows of Young Werther, gave the Sturm und Drang school, with its Rousseauist sensibility, international impact. Werther is Rousseau's emotional, feminized male, pale, melancholy, tearful. He is the moody, double-sexed adolescent first documented by Shakespeare. Romantic adolescence has spiritual superiority. For Werther, childhood is beautiful and pure, while masculine adulthood is sordid and debased. So refusing to grow up is noble. Werther clings to his feminine mood states to defeat time and gender. The Sorrows of Young Werther end in the hero's suicide, I shouldn't laugh, which started a vogue for real suicides throughout Europe. This was the first salvo of the romantic youth cult, to return to our own frenetic 1960s. Goethe said the novel came from the decision to let, quote, my inner self rule me at will, end quote, and to let outside events penetrate. In romantic creativity, the male waits in spiritual passivity, acted upon by internal and external forces. The feminized inner self is the muse who becomes increasingly ferocious as romanticism goes on. So, when you think of Frankenstein's monster, it's like, right? That's the movie version. But no, Frankenstein's monster is actually an extremely articulate, romantic poetry reading, delicate flower emo, which is actually what makes him so terrifying, because he's so perceptive and sensitive, and yet he's so ugly. Everyone who sees him just screams and runs the other way, right? He's triggered by everything, like, actually, and the more he wants and hopes for, the more that his heart, which has been enriched with history and the theology of Milton's Paradise Lost and the story of the fall of Satan, or the fall of Lucifer to Satan, and like, he's filled with all this mythological stuff, but it's all his own private inner world, which has no expression, because he's just a wild, lonely, out of control monster running through the countryside that no one loves, right? And so, yeah, like, the monster himself is super deep. He has the soul of a poet, and that's what makes him so terrifying. Eventually, one day, after learning to read, he checks the pockets of the quote that he stole out of the laboratory when he was first created, and freaked out and ran out. And he finds the notes written by Victor Frankenstein explaining, hey, I'm making a monster, right? And he learns his own origin story after having read Paradise Lost and learned the origin story of Christianity, right? Adam and Eve and whatnot. So he's got theology, he's got history of Rome, and he's got the sensitivities of young Werther, which is like angsty teenage Goethe. And then he reads, oh, by the way, you're a monster created in a laboratory by a guy named Victor Frankenstein, address blah 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 blah. His first thoughts are, hateful day when I received life, I exclaimed in agony. Accursed creator, why did you form a monster so hideous that even you turned from me in disgust? God in pity made man beautiful and alluring after his own image. But my form's a filthy type of yours, more horrid even from the very resemblance. Satan had his companions, fellow devils, to admire and encourage him, but I am solitary and abhorred. And anyway, eventually he comes up with a plan to try and meet the family that he's been spying on and learning from, and you could say it backfires horribly, and thus my protectors had departed and had broken the only link that held me to the world. Great. Now he's got Frankenstein is a walking universe of, the combined muddled up stories of these 3 books, plus the notes, plus the book that the Arabian woman was being taught out of, which was, I think, another old Roman history book, right? So basically he's a totally lonely person whose whole soul is made up of the substance of 4 books. That's the heart of Mary Shelley's Frankenstein. The monster is the animation of imagination within a body which cannot, is unacceptable to society. And all 3 characters, Robert, Victor, and the monster, all of their troubles in life, or all of their eccentricities in life, started when they went off of the standard curriculum and filled their head full of stuff that everyone's like, what? That gave them dreams and imaginations and fancies. That is the creation of, microcosms in the brain of perception of, the soul of this whole book for all 3 of the interesting characters. And all 3 of them end up deep in the Silent Sea, approaching the Arctic, way far gone from most of civilization. Where the hell you going, buddy? Oh, they broke through into Coleridge's Silent Sea. That's what Frankenstein is about. And most of the book is Victor Frankenstein tearing himself up in regret and agony, and it's just all, like, oh, what have I done, sort of stuff, right? People start dying, obviously, and Victor Frankenstein can't tell anyone what's really going on. But the monster's so lonely and the monster's so articulate that he convinces Frankenstein, all right, just make me another person like me. Make me a wife so I can have another like me, and I won't be so lonely, and I'll stop killing people, and I'll just go off in peace. And Victor accepts that logic, and he goes through with it up to the point where he's almost done. And he's right about to turn out, he's right about to do it again. He's right about to do it again and make another monster. And then he realizes, wait a minute, if he has a wife, then they can have children. And if they have children, then I've created a race. And now there's going to be a whole bunch of these things. Even if they were to leave Europe and inhabit the deserts of the New World, yet one of the first results of those sympathies for which the daemon thirsted would be children. And a race of devils would be propagated upon the earth, who might make the very existence of the species of man a condition precarious and full of terror. Had I right, for my own benefit, to inflict this curse upon everlasting generations? I had before been moved by the sophisms of the being I had created. I had been struck senseless by his fiendish threats. But now, for the first time, the wickedness of my promise burst upon me. I shuddered to think that future ages might curse me as their pest, whose selfishness had not hesitated to buy its own peace at the price, perhaps, of the existence of the whole human race. Oh my God, now Victor's grappling with the fate of the entire planet is at risk if I continue on with my crazy dreams that I just thought of because of these books that were right. The world in his head is exploding into the, he's bringing it to fruition. He's creating the world now. And the responsibility weighs so heavily on his heart for what he has done and for what he might still do, right? The whole book is the grappling of a torture genius who has the whole world in his hands, and what is he to freaking... and all he's doing is creating hell and wrecking havoc everywhere, right? With his applied alchemy plus electricity, right? Upon this occasion, my father said, "Oh yes," Victor lets slip, Victor's ranting madly in front of his father. He says, "Human beings and their feelings and passions would indeed be degraded if such a wretch as I felt pride. Justine, poor unhappy Justine, was as innocent as I, and she suffered the same charge. She died of it, and now I am the cause of this. I murdered her," and he lists all the people who died. I murdered them. His father's like, "What are you talking about? My dearest Victor, what infatuation is this? My dear son, I entreat you never to make such an assertion again." "I am not mad," cried Victor. "The sun and the heavens who have viewed my operation can bear witness of my truth. I am the assassin of those most innocent victims. They died by my machinations. 1,000 times would I have shed my own blood, drop by drop, to have saved their lives, but I could not, my father. Indeed, I could not sacrifice the whole human race." The conclusion of this speech convinced my father that my ideas were deranged, and he instantly changed the subject of our conversation and endeavored to alter the course of my thoughts. Holy crap, my son's a weirdo. That is the situation of Frankenstein. That is the engine of the story. That's the whole, all of the action, all the drama, all of the deep thoughts turn on the romantic poets and their junction in history of watching technology and machination and logic take over everything, and people being reduced, well, not reduced, but people becoming ancillary, or the actions of the world get attributed by Adam Smith to, the invisible hand of the market, right? In accordance with Pope's prediction of automatic trance or robocentrism, Smith declared that the mechanical laws of the economy applied equally to the things of the mind. In opulent and commercial societies, to think or to reason comes to be, like every other employment, a particular business which is carried on by a very few people who furnish the public with all the thoughts and reasons possessed by the vast multitudes of labor. In this passage, Smith does seem to sense that the new role of the intellectual is to tap the consciousness of that vast multitudes of labor. That is, the intellectual is no longer to direct individual perception and judgment, but to explore and to communicate the massive unconsciousness of collective man. The intellectual is newly cast in the role of a primitive seer or hero, incongruously peddling his discoveries in a commercial market. So the romantic is an intellectual peddling his discoveries of the great mythical truths of reality in commodities called books, which then go out there and give the individuals who read them their own book-like, linear, sort of private, detached view of the grand mythic web that weaves us all together in the grand story that we all play together. And that is what I got out of reading Frankenstein. So I'm going to leave it there, 33 minutes. This would be much better as an essay, but honestly, I just wanted to get a first draft out here. You should read Frankenstein. I'm going to link it below. As Halloween approaches, there's plenty of nightmare fuel in the idea that one's writings, especially today on the internet, when and what one reads at an early age and the thoughts that fill one's head expand to create the world that you then apply around you. Dreams which come from the creative inception and bloom and can be spread across the globe to even the fate of humanity itself. What demons are being unleashed every day from the inner recesses of the mind to be broadcast the world at large. Yeah. Happy Halloween, everyone. We're going to I'm going to go to the convention tomorrow, talk to people, record some stuff. I'll put it out there. Until next time, take care. In the silent sea, which may any day come, the media maelstrom. Good night.